What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about whether or not we should bail out U.S. airplane companies or airline companies. This is a topic that's been getting a ton of press in the news recently. The Wall Street Journal is out with a report saying the airlines are seeking $50 billion in illness-related aid package. Not saying the word because I don't want to get demonetized, but it looks like airlines are, this bailout would potentially be 3 times the size of the industry's post 9/11 bailout. Originally, it looked like airlines were going to be able to weather this crisis with their own cash reserves, but as this gets worse and worse, the shutdowns get longer and longer in more and more geographies, it's looking increasingly likely that there is going to be huge financial stress placed on almost every single American airline company. These are business models with huge fixed costs, and this is one of the reasons they're so vulnerable. The second, something like 9/11 happens, nobody's traveling, nobody's taking flights, and this is, a huge burden for their business model and basically makes their whole business model break because they're paying for really expensive plane maintenance to keep these spots at airports, to have all these crews. Essentially, what I'm trying to say, if they're not running a lot of flights at really high capacity, pretty much packed, then they are going to be losing money, and they can't lose money for that long. They're going to go out of business. So this is this really weird situation we're now in, what the airlines are saying, look, we need help from the government. Is this going to be a bailout or stimulus? And a lot of people have been criticizing this, and some people, like AOC is even saying that we should ban, if we give the airlines a bailout, we should ban corporate share repurchases because these airline companies have done so much stock repurchasing when times are good, milked us all for billions of dollars in profit, then left their balance sheets super dry. So now that we have this recession occurring, they can't weather it. And now they're asking us for more money, and it seems unfair. So I don't know. I kind of see two sides to this, and I frankly think this is a very topical, fascinating issue where I wanted the internet's take on, because I'm personally undecided. I was reading this op-ed from the New York Times that was like, don't feel bad for the airlines. Like, they got themselves into this mess. It talks about how American Airlines was making billions of dollars in profit every year, spending it all on share buybacks to hit short-term, payment windows, comp windows, stock performance, so these CEOs could get paid big salaries, not really thinking about weathering, a storm like this, because the airline industry is typically super cyclical. It has its ups, it has its downs. There's moments where people decide to freak out and stop flying, and you need to have a rock solid balance sheet to weather those stormy times. But the problem is nobody was doing it, and so now they're asking us to bail them out. And the question is, well, should we be bailing you out? Shouldn't you be more fiscally responsible? Why were you spending billions of dollars buying back stock? Just to show you guys what I'm talking about, this is Rocket Financial, really cool website. But they show that we're looking at American Airlines financials right now. They're just pulling the data from the SEC filings. As we can see, the company is pumping out billions of dollars in earnings here, EBIT, operating income, every single year. If we go to their cash flow statement, you can see that they had, positive earnings. And then here we're looking at $1 billion a year, almost $1 billion, over $1 billion, $4.5 billion worth spent repurchasing common stock, literally almost $10 billion that would have been exactly what they needed right now. They were just using to repurchase their own stock. If we even go to Delta, we can see a very similar trend. Let's go to their cash flow statement, also profitable. The airlines were booming for a long time. And here we have, once again, billions of dollars of share repurchases. So to me, what's so ironic is, and I think what everyone thinks is so ironic, is these airlines were spending literally tens of billions of dollars buying their own stock and are now asking for that tens of billions of dollars back in a government bailout. And I think as much as I think I'm sort of not in the camp of like, don't feel bad for the airlines, you should be managing your company correctly. What we're seeing is, poor management. And the reason why the government is even considering bailing out these companies is because they're too systemically important, like this too big to fail concept. Typically if you're a small business and you don't save up any money and the economy goes down, you're out of business, tough luck, you're bankrupt. But if you're a huge company, the government might write you a check and say, here's a couple billion to get through it. I think this is totally unfair and a double standard and a huge problem. But then the flip side is, what are we going to do? Let airlines go out of business and, have no flights at all, and then the price of flying is going to skyrocket because we only have a couple airlines left that have monopolized it? Or are we just going to have no flights at all because every single airline goes bankrupt? I mean, this wouldn't be a good scenario for the country. So on some ways, I totally get the government's position of needing to bail them out. But then on the flip side, like what AOC is saying of, should we ban stock repurchases? Is that really the problem here? I totally think it isn't. I think the problem is just lame fiscal management. Right now, it's stock repurchases, but it could be anything else. It could be dividends. It could be spending on dumb things, whatever it is. The problem was their balance sheet just wasn't fortified enough. If you're banning stock repurchases, think about companies like Apple, like Google, like Facebook, like Twitter, who actually should be doing share repurchases, who are probably repurchasing shares in the middle of this crisis because they have rock solid balance sheets. I mean, share repurchasing is a vital part of financial infrastructure and markets. We can't just stop it because some companies were erratic about it. And so that's why on one camp, like the free market person in me is like, let's let the airlines go bankrupt. Like, they need to learn that if they're going to lever their books, then they should go out of business and learn the hard way, and that we should have airline companies only survive that keep their balance sheet, a certain level of cushion. But I don't know. I think this is a really interesting scenario, and this is just something that's going to start popping up for not just the airline industry, but let's talk about the hotel industry, a bunch of different, restaurant, food companies, ride-sharing companies like Lyft or Uber. Everyone need those to get around because we're shutting down public transit, but those companies are already losing money. They lose money on every ride, it seems like. So what are we going to do with them losing more and more billions, but being a critical piece of our public infrastructure? I mean, these are really interesting questions that are starting to come to light, unfortunately, when you have a crisis like the one we do right now. And so anyway, this sort of my food for thought for the day is I wanted to open it up on a discussion of, should we bail out the airlines? Does that make ethical sense? Do we have to? Do we not have a choice? What about stock repurchasing? I think banning that is a really dumb move, but that's just my opinion. Would love to know what you think. Try not to make this too political because, it is what it is. I just think this is, it's a real issue, and there's both sides, and a lot of them make sense, but I think just this is tough decisions are going to have to be made. Do we want to bail these companies out? Which do we bail them out? To what level? And, this is all depending on how long does these quarantines last, because if they keep lasting, we may have to keep bailing out billions and billions, and these tens of billions of dollars of stimulus packages are going to start to be adding up. And at the end of the day, who really foots the bill for all of this? The taxpayer. So that, I think, is the real crux of the issue of why people are so frustrated. They feel like corporate America gets rich in the good times, and then in the bad times, we have to bail them out with getting none of the upside, which I think is kind of partially true in some ways, and maybe what's happening to our airline industry. So let me know what you think in the comments below. This is Hyperchange. Huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, producers, fun in the channel. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.